to create change, you must educate. And that's what advocates do. They educate. And that is the only way to create change, to teach people what to expect.
Hi, and welcome to the Conversations with Julie podcast. I'm your host, Julie Gillespie. Well, holy heck, this conversation with Tracy Tully went from mind-blowing to mind explosions to aha moments like I've not had for so many years, because there's so much in this that I didn't realize. So this is me learning. So you'll get to see me in learning mode of, really understanding what activism is all about and what it can do, and the power behind it. So Tracy Tully is an award-winning international speaker, and you can see why. Once she's in the room and once she's talking about what she's passionate about, you can see why. And Tracy provides training and giving voice to the voiceless, advancing economic prosperity across cultures and beyond borders for a more equitable world. And for Tracy, activism as a practice is a way of creating change and, giving voice to things that have made her angry and have hurt her and hurts all of us. And the power has been learned over a period of time. It's not just something that, someone just has. And I think this was one of the biggest lessons for me coming into this. This is a learnt behavior. This is a practice. This is a coming into being more comfortable with owning your own emotions. And Tracy owns her emotions. Like, it is just so powerful to see someone stand in that place and go, no, this is mine, and I take responsibility for it. This is an incredible conversation that we had around the difference even between activism and advocacy. It's one that will create a lot of change. And so welcome on in to a conversation that'll make a difference. It is amazing to have you in the room, Tracy, because there's so much work that you do, and to pick one topic was really hard. But I'm going to keep us in line. I'm going to try and corral us, and because I want to talk about activism. Because it's such a fascinating space, and I'm seeing more and more in the news and, through different HBR and things like that about activism within the workplace. And I'm fascinated by it because I see that I'm an advocate.
Yes.
And I do a lot of advocacy work. But this idea of activism and the power that it has fascinates me. But it's always been seen as a negative thing, as the problem thing. So I just want to unpack this idea because they're important, really important conversations to be had. So what are the ground rules for having conversations as an activist?
Well, the first one is courage. You've got to be able to communicate, and you've got to be able to communicate with conviction. So you can't be fearful of stepping into that field and becoming or doing activism, being an activist. So having the communication, the ability to research and know your business and know your topic, as well as to be able to present it. So present it in a way that no matter what, as an activist, you're not going to really change too many people's opinions who are obviously the violators. That's not going to happen. And so you have to
then why do it?
Well, because the puzzle is whilst you're going to trying to make social change or political change with an activists who have violated something, the piece of the puzzle is the advocates. So the advocates get the door opened for them to come in, and that's that secret, the meshing, the intermeshing. So you need activism to bring in advocacy, and it's two different types of personalities, two different types of skill set.
My brain is already blown. So part of the ground rules yes, having the courage and the communication and the know-how, and be ready to be poked because it's coming at you.
Absolutely.
But it might also then, do you know your advocates when you go in? Do you know who they are that are going to be the gentle and the moderate speakers that come in and start the advocacy work? Do you know who they are being the activist?
Yes, well, see, an advocate doesn't necessarily have to always be gentle either. They're listeners, they're communicators, but they will argue.
Yeah.
And so they can argue, they can lead, and they can try and protect the people they're supporting or the groups they're supporting with their voice. But they're mainly listeners. So your activists use their voice, and the advocates mainly listen. But there comes a point where they have to step up and they have to become the one that maybe even argues a case.
I knew I was going to love this conversation, but I'm just like, yes. Because I do work in around organisations and in communities where there's stigma around mental health.
Yes.
And coming from a lived experience of mental illness, I've wanted to change the conversations in and around it, because this is what mental illness can look like. But to have a voice in an organisation, to have a voice at the table, it's taken a lot more than just, turning up and having a general conversation. When we look at stigma's around knowledge, attitude, and behaviour. And I've always said that I'm really great at raising awareness, helping for knowledge to be a factor, change the knowledge base. Maybe we can then influence a bit of behaviour and attitude. But when I started talking with you about doing this podcast, the light bulb of, wow, the attitude and behaviour change, that's where activism comes in.
Exactly.
So to eliminate stigma, there needs to, yes, be the advocacy in conjunction with activism. So mind blown. So how do you prepare for these conversations? You've got some ground rules of communication and courage, and being really clear in, what it is that you're delivering. You'd need really good support system for that. How do you prepare for those conversations? What does that look like?
Can I give you an example?
Oh,
Classic example.
Bring it.
All right, excellent. So I wrote a book. I was a 3 times whistleblower against corruption, fraud in the Queensland Department of Education. I chose to write a book about it. Obviously, I lost my career as a result of it. But it came to a point where someone had to do it.
Yeah.
And
thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you. And it was at a point where if you don't do it, then who will? No one would. Everyone was too scared. So I was told constantly, day in, day out, that they will get you. And this fear-mongering is very much the forefront of what is happening in the Queensland Department of Education with staff, employees, etc. So to prepare myself for doing that, I really needed a social media platform. So you have to use the social media, and you cannot be afraid to use the social media, because you could invite trouble with people who don't agree with you. More than likely they won't, because if you're a real firm believer and you had the skill and knowledge and the years under your belt like I did, not too many people are going to pull me on. So that's where you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And you're talking about, where does that, intersect? So for an advocate, if you've felt it, you've done it, you've eaten it, you've slept with it, it's like going into a black hole. You know exactly what it's like going into a deep, dark black hole, and you know how hard it is to climb out of that and what it costs you, your family, your friends, your career, everything. So once you have been able to sit in that black hole for a long time, you can draw yourself out, but you can also feel really comfortable and unique in the fact that you've done that. You've been able to take yourself out of that black hole. And more than likely people with, and I know this from my own experience, when you've had a mental health breakdown or an issue, or you felt suicidal, you've recovered, you never fully recover, but when you've recovered, you get to a point of education where you can actually feel yourself slip for no reason at all. Some trigger might come up, you'll feel yourself slip, and you go, I'm going into this black hole. You know what I'm talking about. It's you know exactly
I have
what
people
it feels
do
like.
that.
Yeah. And then, so you're aware of it, you're present in it, you breathe yourself through it, you talk yourself through it, you action steps and strategies that prepare you to get out of it. And you go, whoa, it's like diving into this really deep swimming pool. Or for me, scuba diving. And then all of a sudden you've got too many weights on and you just go straight down.
You can't neutralise that buoyancy.
Yeah. So for me, I wrote my book, and I wrote my book deliberately to hurt. I was after hurt because my children had been attacked and damaged significantly.
Physically too.
Absolutely physically. And there's at no point where there was no prisoners for me. There was absolutely zero prisoners for me. And I think most people in the education field knew that. They knew there wasn't going to be any negotiation with me. I got to the point where I was quite comfortable with what I was saying, and I knew it all. There was nothing I didn't know or experience.
But it wasn't just your experience that you were fighting for, or your children's. It wasn't just singular.
No.
Because to be an activist, it's social. It's group, it's teams, it's an environment, it's a community. It's systemic.
Mm-hmm. It's a collective.
It's a collective. So when you're in this position where you know that what's happening is abhorrent, in part of preparing yourself, are you talking with those others that you're down there in the arena with and you can see are also damaged by this?
Absolutely. So definitely in the arena, that's for sure. And I also use the analogy that you can fight in the arena like I call myself a swordswoman. There's no
warrior.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
There's no shield laddie with me.
No.
But there's also a time where you have to step out of that, and you have to step out, and I say you have to go be able to stand by the fire. And to stand by the fire, you have to be able to listen to those people. I attracted that all the time, constantly attract people with their stories every single day and night. My phone goes. I'm happy for people to have my private mobile. They can find me on the website. They can find me on Google very simply. And I love it. And at no time has it become a burden, because people are very respectful in those fields who are suffering and hurting. And the patterns are similar, obviously, with every single person. So I can sort that and look at it for its fact only. And I always say to everyone, fact only, not emotion, because that's not what I do, the emotion. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I can hear the fact and work with that.
So in talking with other people, and I'm just digesting this because I've got the visual of it, like I've painted the picture. By not allowing the abhorrent to continue happening, to not allow, and to be angry and to want to hurt, there's finally someone that knows how so many other people are feeling. And so they're reaching out and say, please listen to me too, because I need to have a voice somewhere.
Yeah.
So it becomes not just, well, it was never a singular voice anyway. So you've gone on to be a whistleblower a few more times. They weren't about singular things. They were about systemic issues, weren't they?
Absolutely, yep.
From all of these stories you're hearing?
Well, mainly from my own.
Mainly from your own?
Yeah, but obviously I was witnessing tenfold as well. So anything that happened to me has happened to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people across Australia and within the state. So you are representing people where violations, when they occur, pretty similar in the same fields, regardless. When it's bullying, it's bullying. When it's assault, it's assault. It's when there's grief. There's various stages of grief, but how do you define grief? It's each person's.
Yeah, because being able to prepare for these conversations, it does take something very particular to be able to be the activist. Mm. So for people who don't feel they've got that personal resource, they've just been damaged that too much and they're fearful that too much. What can they be doing to prepare themselves to at least still be heard?
Really good question. That's a really good question. I actually start from a physiological point of view. So in my book, I think at the end of the first chapter, I write about my 5 micro habits. So if I wake every day and I'm very disciplined in how I think now as a result of what I've been through, I like to get my day sorted psychologically and with a huge discipline. So my 5 micro habits are really simple. Something simple like the minute I wake, I will not look at the clock. I will not, under any circumstance, look at the time, because all that does is provide anxiety and opens the door
It's a stressor.
Yeah, stressor. So then a stretch. And what you're doing is you're connecting with yourself, and that's when you start your self-awareness and self-confidence and self-belief. If we don't start right there at the beginning of every day, we can get untethered very easily. Next thing, I have a glass of room temperature water. So I have a stretch, sit up, have the glass of water, then stand up and everything goes south. So you've got to walk to the bathroom.
Oh, that's it.
Ablution time.
Yes.
And then after the ablution time is the time to do squats. And squat like a man. That's what my physio taught me. So
I've got a song made, squat like a man.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So you do 5, 10, like 75 squats, 5 or 10 squats, whatever. Go to the sink, obviously wash your hands, but look in the mirror, and that's really another powerful thing, is to be able to look at yourself and tell yourself you're going to have a good day, because it's all neurology, isn't it? You tell yourself you're going to have a good day, and you will. And if you own your own presence and you own your own mind and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, you set yourself up very positively. Then the last one is I'll do 10 arm lifts of weights with some weights and everything. Really simple, free, won't cost you a cent. There's no excuses that can be hooked to these not to do them. They're simple 5 micro-reps, extremely powerful. And every time you go to the toilet, if you do those squats, well, you could end up, a lot of squats in a day.
That's a lot of squats in a day.
Yeah, and so the strategy to start puts yourself in the right mindset.
Because there's this idea, the story that we sometimes tell ourselves is that I can't do that. But we then believe that story, that I'm not that person. Well, we're going to believe that story. And to reset every morning, because that's what it sounds like, is that you wake up in the morning, it's reset, and you're starting the day off in honor of yourself. So that's part of your resources. That's part of your toolkit that you have to be courageous. It also sounds like you really own your emotions.
Yeah, it's very important. Very important that you own it, because no one can do it for you. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand, because they want a doctor to fix them. They want a tablet to fix them. They want a psychiatrist to fix them. They want the employer who's violated them to stop it and acknowledge it. None of that's going to happen.
No. So to be able to own it and say, well, this is mine, because you sounded like you owned your anger and I'm loving that, by the way, to own that and use it as a resource instead of a weapon against yourself.
Yes, that's a powerful word, and that's a good word.
Yeah.
Because that's what people do. They don't realise they're using it as a weapon against themselves.
Because the shield, I think, the shield's put up to protect us from things coming at us, but they also stop us from expressing what's and being able to live and openly be how we're feeling. Sometimes it stops that, so people can't see that you're hurting. Exactly.
No one will usually see someone who's scared.
So part of owning those emotions, part of owning that, you know what? No, absolutely not will I be treated this way, and I hate being treated this way, and to own that, to not be behind a shield, to not weaponize it maybe, but to be able to simply be able to express it is part of that preparation as well.
Yeah, and the self-awareness and self-doubt. When I wrote my book, and I wrote a couple of blogs that obviously got the journalist's eyes very quickly onto my website, and I was invited to speak in Egypt in March in 2020, just before they're going to close all the borders, and I was asked to speak in Egypt as the first female activist, political activist.
Wow!
And I thought, whoa, this is good, but it's scary, but it's good.
Well, it's scary because we've had so many journalists that were locked up
not
long before that.
Exactly, yeah. So, and I said to my family, I was more worried about getting caught, not being able to get back in. I said to my family, look, this is something I wanted to do all my life, go to Egypt, but to speak as well. It was like a golden goose. I said, are you okay with me going over knowing that I could get stuck or something? Anything could happen. Who knows? You only live once. Like, that's my motto. Have a go at everything. And they were really supportive. My family were incredibly supportive because they stood by me and saw and heard everything. So they witnessed everything. And the one thing about my story is no one knows it other than myself, all the angles. They all think they know it, and They got no idea. So I went to Egypt. I went into a country that doesn't tolerate women talking out and whatnot. And there I was on a stage and speaking, and all the people looking after all the equipment, the tech equipment, were university students. A lot of them were girls. And I knew
They would have
that I
had
was
their
going to
mind blown.
Yeah. And I knew I was responsible for that then. And the minute I was sitting there watching them, and everyone had earphones. And I thought, this is really strange. We're walking into speaking, but everyone's got a set of earphones. I didn't realise that it was converting each participant's what I was saying into their language. It was really, really out there for me. It was pretty cool.
Well, you talk about this responsibility. That's heavy because you are being socially responsible for your anger, for the no, this is not tolerable, and for speaking out in a way, and for how other people are treated as a result.
And how they were going to react to me, because I was in a foreign country and I knew the minute I walked out of that room, anything could happen. My passport was tucked into my chest very close, and
Yes.
so was my money. So, yeah, I looked around the room. I felt very confident still because I believed in the beautiful woman who put me there, that, I was invited by the president. So I knew I was there on an invitation, and it could go either way. And so I just decided to run with my own self-awareness and self-belief. And the outcome was phenomenal, 50 times more than I ever dreamed it could possibly have been. I was accepted. The uni students came up to me afterwards and they asked me if I would come back and train them, back to Egypt and train them. And I thought, they're just being nice. This is just lovely. They're doing the right thing in front of the cameras, but they weren't. And I said, righto, if you are really interested, come back and meet me in this place in 24 hours' time. And if you're here, then we'll make it happen. And they were. They were all there, including the university president and vice president, who are both males, who demanded to know what right did I have to be there to offer this training to the ladies in the university. So I did what I would do in any Western country. I said, hey, buddy, this invitation's not to you. And, of course, the aggression is obviously bubbled up.
Yeah.
And I expected that and disrupted for that reason. And I let him have his rant. And then I said, but if you'd like to join us, make that happen. And I was, okay. I said, yeah, but we'll make females sessions, training sessions. We'll make male training sessions because the females deserve the right to have their own privacy. I said, and at the end, we'll have both. We'll bring them both together. And it got over the line. We got there, and the only thing was everything slammed shut. I couldn't get back. But it was pretty amazing to get to that level at university level, that they felt comfortable to come back to me in 24 hours. The whole conference, there's 3,000 women there. The whole conference was buzzing and knew what had happened. 2 recently appointed Supreme Court judges, female Supreme Court judges, came to me. So this is in 2020. This is the first time they had female Supreme Court judges. They came to me and said, whatever you need, we'll make it happen. So it's that interconnection, the collaboration. That's the tipping point when everything will work.
There's so much in that, because this is where hope sits.
I'll take you to Egypt and you can come with me.
Done. We have witnesses.
Yeah.
I'm going to Egypt. But this is where hope sits for so many people, because they don't feel that they have the voice, or they've listened so often to those who are bringing them down. They no longer value themselves. To have someone stand up and go, stuff that, I'm coming at you, and I will disrupt, and I will create a reaction. I'm going to ask you about it, and then we're going to do what we can to resolve it. So it's not just, activism isn't just blaming, arguing, ranting, carrying on and going hysterical, being hysterical about things. It's, this is the problem. This isn't good enough, and being disruptive and calling it for what it is, but also having the nous and the communication skills and the knowledge and the research to say a possible solution is.
You talk about being in the arena fighting, and you can't use a better analogy as that because, as an activist, you do have to have the hard stuff. You have to be able to stand tall, strong, and endure and be really resilient no matter what. But also when you're in an arena fighting, and a lot of people hate that word fight. Where's the fight come from? My boss said the other day, Tracy, where's that fight come from? I said, Defence Force family. Take no prisoners. But when you're in the arena fighting, there's more than just knowing your skill and having your confidence in you. You have to be able to problem solve, and you have to be able to strategize, and you have to be able to do it on the spot. And that's where a lot of people struggle. And that's a really honed skill, to be able to be so flexible and to be able to shift and read what's happening and operate in accordance with that flexibility that's required.
I've just realised, and this is why I love these conversations, I've just realised so much. There's a few frameworks that's in my head at the moment, but what you're talking about is this idea that what you're doing has got nothing whatsoever to do with ego.
No. No, you can't let ego in.
Okay. Because when ego gets in, it goes into tactical, that moment and, attack. Because attack isn't fighting. Okay, so when ego is put aside and just going, you've got no use here. We go into strategy, we go into big picture, we go into whole person. And this idea that who I am, all of who I am is turning up into this. And I need all of who I am to be able to be adaptive, to be responsive, to listen, but I'm coming into this and I'm coming at this to change this.
Yes, I think this is the beauty of an activist, and there's different types of activists, and I sit in my own lane. I don't even call it a lane or a highway. I'm on the tarmac. I'm ready for takeoff.
Got the jet stream ready.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and I like it. It's taken me a long time to get there. I did start in the lane, and I shifted across the highway, and I got off the exit, and thought, something more here. So I'll take the tarmac, and that was pretty big for me when I made the decision to speak internationally. And I spoke the other day online in Canada about this favourite topic of mine at the moment, which is the corruption in the Queensland Department of Education and wage theft for employees there, and how disgraceful it is. And so I spoke about that, and then and I will continue. And automatically, I was invited to Rome. So that's to me, that's my tarmac time, where you can take your topic. And you can take it where no one can touch you, because once you've flown, once you've taken off in that plane, no one can touch you. And it's really good to know you've got your wings, and you become a different person, and you come at it from a whole different angle then too.
It's really expansive. It takes who you are and all of the things that you've done and repurposes it nearly, because you've had careers, let's say, and one of them, was being as a school principal, which is challenging.
Yeah, it's not enviable. You had a party and they say, what are you doing? Say, principal, they go, oh, okay. No, good on you.
My condolences. So you've had all of these things that you've had to endure and experience, but to go into activism and to change attitudes and behaviours is even more expansive again. But it repurposes all those skill sets and that knowing and that experience and ability to fight. Because as a principal, you would be fighting for your students.
As students, teachers, parents.
Yeah.
And yourself.
Yeah.
You never seem to fight for yourself at all. You don't get the chance to. But yeah, for your students, and they very much are neglected in the big scheme of things. It's all about politics and it's all about money. It's all about egos, and kids are last.
Well, and I guess that's where this realisation that in activism there is no ego, there's no room for it, because what you're up against is ego.
Exactly, and you have to know and feel that and understand what that is. The kickback's hard, really hard.
Because in advocacy, I'm able to listen and poke and prod and nuance and show a different way and influence and, support. So ego doesn't get challenged. Oh, sometimes does. I can't help that. But it doesn't get really challenged, whereas activism is challenging the ego.
Yes, definitely. You're impeding, you're disrupting.
Yeah.
And that will hurt people because they don't want to be found out. They don't want to be outed. I'm in the newspaper and I'm in the media and radio a bit, and I'll say things like, we have this incredible shortage of teachers at the moment. And the comeback will be, but we've got 6,000 supply teachers. I said, well, you answer this question then. How come we've got 50 people absent from schools every day? That goes over your 6,000. So what isn't happening you're not telling the world about? I can tell you what isn't happening. Why don't you have a go at it yourself and then problem solve? They don't want to hear that. They don't want to problem solve. They just hide. And it's this culture that's so ingrained that it's disgraceful, it's appalling, it's reprehensible, and that's what people do. That's the violators. You're chasing those violators.
And as you were saying before, this is across industries. Like this isn't just education.
I'm just using that. I could use health. I could use aviation. I could use mining. I could use a range. Yeah.
And it's out there. So to be able to understand that the ego is also a protective factor for those people, because they don't want to be exposed. But what is it that would be exposed? They don't know the answer. They don't have the answer. They've not been given the resources to come up with the solution. So yes, we're hurting people, but sometimes we're hurting the hurt. Is there I don't think there's another way, to create change.
To create change, you must educate. And that's what advocates do. They educate. And that is the only way to create change, to teach people what to expect, what is the right standard you should expect. We have wage theft and I'm going to go back to the education department. We have wage theft in a lot of industry, but let's use the Department of Education where we know they're public servants and they don't get their half-hour lunch break because they're always either doing yard duty, bus duty, meetings, etc. So toilet time and a sandwich time doesn't exist for teachers. Never has, and it's a culture that's expected, and it's a ridiculous culture that could just go like that. It could be just put to bed, but no, because it's too hard. And why would we do that? And what would we do to fill that gap? And that no one will have that conversation. They're about to, because I'm going to start that conversation everywhere.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah, and it's something that it's the bleeding obvious.
But you nail it on the head. It's a conversation that's going to get started.
We're doing it now.
We're doing it now. But this is what it looks like, And there's so many times I'm in a situation where it's like. Because I teach mental health first aid.
I love that.
And I'm in training and someone asks me a question that's like, I don't know. And they're like, but don't you know? It's like, well, no, I'm not a clinician. I'm not this, I'm not that. But gee, great question. Is it relevant to being, a first aider? Probably not, but I love your curiosity. Here's a place you can go figure it out and tell me the answer. But I don't need to know. And I've come to this understanding that is a great thing because then I don't have to try so hard. But I can say that because there's no ego involved. But that starts with that conversation, doesn't it? And so what I'm getting to is where in that starting of conversation can we let the people that we're wanting to have a conversation with that it's okay not to have the answer because we've thought about this a lot. We might have a few solutions.
So to give them the opportunity to talk to talk about the hurt, because you're right, they don't know the answers. That's why they want someone to talk to, and I get that a lot. People just want to talk, and I like to listen to what they have to say. And the biggest thing there is to understand that they don't know where to go. And it's all right for me. I've been there. I've done that road, and it took 10 years. It took a long, long time, and it wasn't a pretty road. It was I lost everything. I lost absolutely everything, my marriage, my family, my home, everything. I was forced to transfer 12 hours away from my husband where, you're not actually going to go home for drive 12 hours. Have a bit of family time and drive 12 hours back. So the Department of Education owed me a lot. And it's not them or there, but the people in it that did it to me were pretty ignorant and just didn't bother seeking or understanding. And you've got people who are hurt by those types of people. They don't understand either. I was really fortunate. I think the only reason I'm here today alive speaking to you is because I have a phenomenal detective police inspector in our town. Mick Dowie, he's won the Australian Police Award this year, and he deserved that 15 years ago. But he is a brilliant officer, and was a brilliant officer because he was able to explain to me every step of the way what was happening to me politically, and he was able to guide me. Well, without that special person in my life, and for some reason I was really fortunate, no one gets that sort of person. And so he's at the front of my book, and as he should be. And I take that responsibility to pass the baton, to do what he did for me.
So you're being that person for others.
Yeah, pass the baton.
And for that other side, because activism seems to make sides happen. So for that other side, like, how are we getting their conversation started so they can feel like they can step into it being a conversation? Like, what can we do?
Stephanie Bennett and Maddie are doing it right now in the Courier Mail. So they've put their email address in the Courier Mail and said, "Send us your stories and don't be fearful. Send us your stories and we'll make them heard." Now, I couldn't think of a better invitation for people who can just be anonymous and send the stories in. And everyone on the phone for the last 2 weeks, I've been encouraging them to do it. And then, of course, they had some really good stories last weekend as well, which has brought another layer in. And I'm constantly giving them more information about what's coming. The beauty is people have never had that opportunity before because they're so scared. And I get people, I say, "Give me your story and I'll give you a fake name." No journalist is going to know who you are, where you are. And they'll go, "Oh, but they'll know who I am." I said, "What, out of 50,000, 60,000 people? You've got to be kidding me." I said, "Do you think you're the only person that's been bullied?" Everyone's getting the same thing done to them. So to give them the power to speak is huge. And Stephanie's done that, Courier Mail. ABC does it too.
Because what I want to think of, and what I want to lead this conversation into is, as an organisation, as a business leader, when there is this type of activism that started within, the business, what can they do to not have it as sides, not have it as a he said, she said type of scenario, and be able to go, "Holy crap, this is happening. What they're talking about is really hard to hear. But gee, if I can harness the power of that social movement, we can really change this organisation into something that's we're all going to be proud to be in." Because otherwise, if these guys get their way, they're going to tear the business down and apart. I'm saying this specifically and for a reason, because that's how activism can be seen, as a tearing down and against. So from an organisation, from a business leader's perspective, when they've got someone like yourself who are saying, "No, not enough," what can they do to harness your energy and drive and will for movement to better a system, a process, an organisation, a community?
Love it.
Absolutely. I want to know that.
Phenomenal question. So for me, the key is teaching employees resilience. So you don't come in to the table with these business leaders to embarrass or shame them or make them humiliated at all. You come in with an education background and you're there to educate your employees the best way of knowing and understanding how to work with their leaders. And the biggest thing is to teach them resilience. The other thing is and I'm really strict with this, someone comes to me with a story and I say, "Yeah, I'll listen to the story." I say, "Now, all I want from you is everything in chronological order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He said, she said, I don't want any emotion, zero emotion. And it has a wonderful effect on people because it helps them to look at it in a different way. And then you've got your leaders in a business who are very appreciative of that because they're probably not the ones who are able to lead that conversation, not unless they're really good in that HR mode, because they're leaders and they're doing budgets and they're doing strategy and they're doing analysis and they're doing marketing, sales and everything. They don't have the time for the soft touch. But the education isn't a soft touch. The education is pivotal for activists, advocacy and change.
So for a business leader who is in that position to go, you know what, I'm putting this stuff aside because this is bigger. Like this is going to either destroy this or make this other side of it. For them to say to people, look, let's have a fact-based, let's have a chronological, let's have data point conversation about what it is that's actually happening. For now, I invite you to put the emotional side there, to the side for the minute so I can know specifically what it is that's happening. The courage for that conversation. But to be able to put it in that line, does that help?
Absolutely. And I use a strategy called stoplights. It's really simple and have done forever. So you give a stoplight sheet to employees, put it in their box, mailbox. It's all anonymous, and you want them to do 3 things. Number 1, stop doing this immediately. Number 2 is your amber, so you need to change in this area. And number 3 is go full bore. We love what you do here. Keep doing it. So it's really simple. It's non-confrontational, and as a leader reading it, you can guarantee they're going to feel good about themselves too because they get the option of 3. Stop, think about it, go. It's no different to being on the road. You know, it's you have to have the action. You've got to take the action, and then you have the analysis after. So to have the courage to just go and put a piece of paper in someone's pigeonhole or on their desk or something, or send it to them online and say, hey, fill this in, print it out and stick it in this box so no one's going to know who you are. We're not fingerprinting you. That's a really good, simple strategy, and that's a problem-solving strategy any organisation can do, regardless how big it is.
Because it also shows listening that, oh God, this is coming at us. It's starting to feel like a tsunami that if we don't do something, we've got massive, massive problems on our hands. We're not just going to get churn of staff, we're going to have massive resignations and loss of customers and all of the other stuff that goes along with it, reputation, everything. To be able to say a simple thing as that of being able to say, as business leaders, ask for feedback, but make it really specific what you're after and that it can be anonymous and it's not a well-being check or how the individual is going, because don't you dare put this on the individual at this point and ask them, from a systemic point of view, stop right now, have a think about this part's going great.
It's a win-win. Traffic light survey, real simple. Less is more. Keep it simple for everyone. The person you're giving it to, it's de-identified and the boss is getting to read at the most simplest level and then build up from there because you're building trust.
Yes. And you're showing that you're willing to take the risk. What you said before, being brave.
You have to read that stuff.
And willing to take the risk to be hurt.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're leaders, we get hurt. That comes with the territory.
And so what are we going to do with the ego part during that? Well, I think ego really has to be put aside for this if you're going to do anything about it. Otherwise, you're going to be in reaction.
Yep, exactly.
Because I think the social movement is so powerful, because we've got platforms, like you're saying, as an activist, you utilize the social media platform. You harness power so people see you, so it's also a protective factor. So it's smart to utilize that and to harness that and say, hey, well, what if I was able to convince that one person, that activist, that I was actually working to do a better job? I know I've messed up. I know I've done bad. How can I fix this? Because I've got no idea how. This is how I was treated. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Like that's where transformation happens, not just change.
Mm. Transformational leadership is really exciting because at the end of the day, we look at history, and some of these leaders do have to look at the history. Well, how do we get there? And the blame game's never going to work. The blame game's never going to work. I mean, that's just going to get in the way. It's just like locking the gate. But to say the history has happened. So the culture for education department is wage theft and time theft. That's just a culture. Who started? It's been around for decades. 3 decades at least. I know when I started in education, it wasn't the way, but it certainly didn't take too long to get there. You can't blame people for that. So, but to open up the conversation about it and say, okay, this is it. How can we do this better? Do a traffic light survey. You'll find it, every teacher will write down that time and lunch time. Would be your biggest thing. So then in any organisation, there'll be a pattern that comes out, and go for those patterns first to see what is it that isn't happening. Is it communication? Is it a lack of communication? Is it a lack of trust because there's no communication? Trust, communication. Communication is the biggest thing, isn't it? It's the absolutely big. And resilience.
Yeah.
And you'll find in most workplaces, employees probably don't feel that empowered for one reason or another. Teach them resilience, and then they can help themselves as well.
But I see it also as being organisational resilience. You know, you have to have a resilient organisation, one that can bounce back from adversity. And an organisation can only do that through the power of the people. You know, to be able to see things and contextualise things for them, and to be able to let them know this is coming, be ready, brace yourselves, this is coming for us, allows an organisation to respond to big events. So there's got to be that organisational, and then team, leader, and then the individual. So yes, we want our individuals and our people to be resilient, but we can't ask them to do that because we can't do it as an organisation. That creates a brittle environment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, it just puts a rift in between them, doesn't it?
Yeah. So activism's changing. You know,
Definitely.
because yes, we've got these social media platforms to help us change it. How else have you found it changing?
I suppose for me, I forged my own row. I suppose that I was going to go into, and it shocked me because when I started this journey, to me, an activist was something that was in human rights or whatever, and it was a whole different ball game. To me, I didn't actually see myself as an activist until someone labelled me with that. A magazine actually labelled me with it. And then I was actually invited to be an activist overseas. And then I had to sit back and think, oh, what does that mean, righto? Okay, I see what I think. Take no prisoners. But then I had the responsibility to become something. So I suppose for each person, the activism nowadays, it can be political, it can be social, it can be in terms of community, industrial. There's a whole range of wonderful areas, and anyone can get into that field via advocacy. So anyone can be an advocate. Yes. And then I suppose the next level is when you put your hand up to take on that mantle, or you pass the baton to someone who is probably a long-distance runner and who can handle that the hitting the wall, I call it. I tell my people, you got to know what it's like to hit the wall, and you won't know until you hit it. And when you do, I'm there for you because it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. And all athletes know what it's like to hit the wall.
Isn't that interesting? I'm just thinking of all of the people that I work with in organisations that say, Julie, I need to make a change. I need this to be different for the people that are in my care. So people and culture, HR, safety, those types of categories in business. And they're activists. Like this is this idea that I need to make change. I need to look after my people better. They're taking responsibility for the safety and well-being of the entire organisation full of people. And they're taking it to the table. They're pushing for these things to happen. That's activism within an organisation, isn't it? It's not just advocacy of that help and support and the nuanced stuff that advocacy can do. And yet, because they've done listening, Because there's no change sometimes through just listening.
Oh, there definitely isn't any change from just listening. The army says you take action first, then you think about it, because you're trained to. You're trained to, and you know exactly what to do and how to do it. And that's, once again, coming back to education. If we teach our children in schools to be more resilient, we teach them to analyse and to think. We teach them to comprehend of all things and make up their own mind, not to be led by a mob of sheep, etc. And you transport that or transform that into an industry or a workplace, and you will help people considerably.
So activism's attainable and more reachable, and yes, it still needs the courage. Yes, it still needs those communication skills and the conviction that comes along with it, and owning the emotion that comes along with it. But it's a social responsibility too.
It's a huge responsibility for me to open my mouth. It's a huge responsibility, and I know it. I'm very aware of it, because I know how many people are listening to me. I know how many messages and texts and Facebook comments I get, or Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever, and I know that people are watching me, and I don't realise how many people are watching me. So the thing is, if you have to be prepared to take the baton, someone has to be prepared to pass the baton to you to, I believe, become an effective activist. It's all well and good, doing the bra burning. We can all do that, but that's the signal for that is what is in behind that. For say women, for example, to have the strength to do A, B, and C. I'm just in the process of upgrading my truck license right now to an HR truck, and
she drives trucks, people.
And so from an HC, well, I've had an HC license for 40 years. So and I put it on my Facebook because I did it for my birthday. I thought it was pretty cool, and I loved it. And it comes back to the number of people who saw that who couldn't understand why I would want to upgrade to a HR truck license right now in my life and everything, and why would I want to drive, for a job? I'm after weekend work in HR for a reason, because I just love it. But for me, the kickback is the freedom that gives me to meet people, speak to people, to be on the road. I'm a long-haul driver. I just love it. To go down to Melbourne and back, I just love and adore. But I can marry that with everything else I do. And it's being able to pass the baton to someone who's flexible, someone who's has the ability to take that responsibility and not just be rah, 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 rah all the time and, let's rip off our T-shirts and now burn our bras. I think there has to be more to it than that. There has to be an education.
Yes.
There has to be incredible knowledge of what you're talking about without being too sassy.
Well, because once we get rid of one support thing, we need another in its place. So if we're ripping that bra off,
exactly.
Great. But what's going to hold them up afterwards?
Yeah, Wonder Bra Sisters, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what a perfect analogy. Like, there was nothing that came in as an alternative. There was no other solution. No, we don't want to be constricted by this. Isn't the answer. That's not activism. That's reacting. Okay. So activism isn't about a reaction. It's about a response.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of people react because they're angry.
Yeah. Whereas you gave yourself some space to take that anger and just go, I know what I'm going to do with that.
Yeah, I have to do something responsible with it. Yeah.
Which was then the response. Okay. Because brain blown once again. Because, when I talk to people in, about mental health and talking to other people who are suffering at the time and, we don't know what their reactions are going to be. But if we go in without a plan, without an idea or without a framework of how we're going to help someone, we're also going to react. To be able to give ourselves the space, to be able to see something happening and just go, oh, I wonder what that is. Now I've got my frameworks. I don't know what it is. I might ask about that. There's still that bit of space given to be able to respond. And it changes everything, because then it's not seen as rude. As much as it's confronting, there's reason for it. There's tension instead of conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, when I wrote my book, Fearless, it was very cathartic for me. It really helped me. And I had wonderful people buy it, and 90-year-old ladies ring me up and say, I love your 5 micro habits. I try them every morning. I thought, oh, how cool is that? And one lady rang me up, she said, are you not religious? Because you've got this sentence in here. And I said, I love Buddhism or something. And I said, oh, yeah, if you read it in context, you'll get what I'm saying. And you can have these conversations with the people. So the power of writing and speaking together is pretty big as well. So that helps people to put their thoughts down on paper or record them, what you're doing now. Yeah, that's for eternity.
Well, and Emma and I, my PA and I, will just be sat here and listening to this again and then talking about it for hours on end about what about that point? Oh, what about that point? Because this is the space that people are being given now to be able to respond. And if they choose their response to be one of activism, I think people are now more prepared to understand what that's going to take and if that's for them. I think more people have it in them than they give themselves credit for.
It's a tall poppy syndrome, though, in Australia, so it's a dangerous slope. For a person to become a whistleblower, it literally opens the door to you to be an activist. I get people write to me and they say, should I whistleblow in this? And so then I'll talk them through what will happen to them if they do, what's allowed, what isn't allowed, what's legal, what isn't legal, et cetera, so they can make up their own mind. But it's a fine line to choose to be an activist, and you have to know that once you enter that arena, there is no going back. You'll fight to the death, literally. At what point do you go, oops, I had enough now, bail out? There's no bailout. So you have to be prepared to know and understand that you have to build your own resilience so that you'll grow in it, so you don't grow scared in it.
So it's a practice.
It is a practice, very much so. So I'm so disciplined every morning. Every morning I drive my car to work. I thank the universe that I'm alive. I'm backed out, okay, I got on the highway and I'm alive. I love that. And it's an acknowledgement that you're present, you're doing tough stuff, you're saying tough things, and people are going to think whatever they want of you. And, hey, I care, I really don't care. Bring it on sort of thing. But I lost that fight mode long ago. But people see assertion as fight. And that's a lot of people don't understand assertion, and there's your tripping point for a lot of activists. They're assertive, they speak with conviction, so they usually speak loudly. They use their hands a lot, so people say, "You're pointing at me," whatever. So you've got physiological aspects of you too when you become a political or an activist. So it's not just about your voice or your thoughts. There's a whole range of other stuff that kicks in too. So you need to be able to keep educating yourself up and staying above it all at all times.
I love it so much. I love talking to you about all of this, Tracy, because there's so many alignments to how we turn up in every day to ask for things for ourselves as well, just the normal everyday stuff. And it is a real practice. There's 3 questions I like to ask all of my guests.
Yes.
And the first one is, fill in the blank. A conversation can.
Conversation can open the door.
To anything, right?
Anything. The world's your oyster.
What has been the greatest lesson, good or bad, that you've learned about having conversations?
The greatest lesson for me about learning to have a conversation is to be able to stop talking and listen. It's a hard one for me.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think everyone suffers through that. Yeah, we all suffer. Yeah, it's the greatest learning. I have to strive at that every day.
It's work, but it's so worth it. Some of the things that you hear, and it's the only path of growth, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. What is something you would like others to know about difficult conversations?
I like 2 things. There's 2 things I'd like other people to know, and use the power of breathing and use the power of the pause. If we breathe and we're conscious of how we breathe, we're in control of what comes out of our mouth, and it gives us time to think. You use the power of the pause to stop and get your thoughts in order you will basically prevent yourself from, tripping up too much if you just use the power of the pause and not be afraid of that silence. Silence. No, don't be afraid of silence.
Because as you're collecting yourself, you're giving a gift of time for someone to do that too. It's how we de-escalate, isn't it?
It is, and de-escalation is important.
Which is that space. Love those. Thank you so much for talking about activism and this idea of where it is and what it can do today and the difference between activism and advocacy, because they do go hand in hand.
They do. It's a puzzle.
Yeah.
They fit together. Absolutely.
And especially when we're talking about stigma in relation to mental illness and how it's treated, to be able to understand that all of these aspects are needed if we're going to eliminate it.
Yeah, it's a big area.
I'm on.
Yeah.
Game on.
Good on you. I love what you do.
I'm up for that challenge. Don't know. I don't think activism's coming into it. This is part of what that is, isn't it?
It is.
Calling
absolutely. It is. You putting it out there in the open for listeners to share that and pass the baton. And that's the greatest thing we can do is pass the baton.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Welcome back, everyone. What a conversation, right? The world of activism is completely different to what I thought it was. To me, and how it's been spoken about to me over the years was this idea that it's hysterical, and it's a reaction. Whereas we've got this idea from today's conversation with Tracy that activism is a response. It is a real response to an injustice, to a pain, to a hurt, to abuse, to a number of different factors. It's well thought out. It needs to be well thought out, well researched, and to gain clarity. And we can only do that once we start processing this stuff ourselves. Because the work that I've been doing has been advocacy for a number of years now for those with mental health problems and mental illness, especially in the workplace. But I see now through this podcast and through some of the things that I'm doing is I'm tipping into that activism, which I actually feel quite comfortable about now after that conversation with Tracy Tully, because I'm speaking for others. I'm speaking to change things that must change. And it all starts with a conversation. I know how simple that is, but I'm also very real in the aspect of I've owned the practice of this. I've owned the responsibility of learning how to do this. Advocacy, I understand, is about raising awareness, about listening to the collective, being able to harness information and then being able to ask for necessary change, being able to embody what that looks like. Activism, gosh, man, you have to own your emotions and you have to know really why you're doing what you're going to do because, wow, you need to be courageous. And you've got to be vocal and you've got to be public for your own safety. But there's also this idea of while you're in activism mode, activism is about action, is about change. We got to educate. We got to come with solutions to be able to help people move from one thing to the next. Because if we're not coming with solutions, we're just ranting. So I just want to repeat, activism is not a reaction, it's a response. There's a plan, there's a purpose. It's there to cause disruption, necessary disruption. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Tracy. There's more to come with me and Tracy. There's just too many conversations I think that we have to have. And I look forward to those. Wow, that was just so robust. I'm seriously mind blown with all that we're able to uncover. And we kept it short. So I want to come back again and delve into these conversations, very important ones. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate you being able to give us some feedback of what you thought of these conversations, what you want to see us have conversations about. Please leave a rating and a review. I'm just going to say it makes us feel good. No, we know we're being liked and appreciated, but it helps us to be motivated to move on and do more. So thank you, and start a conversation that makes a difference. Thank you.